it's unacceptable. I don't know what more to say. I think we just have to be vigilant that, I got into politics to make a difference. I don't know if I knew what I know now about, the abuses you have to take. I would certainly have a second thought. And that's what I don't want. I don't want women and others to not step up into politics because they're worried about their safety.
So Ottawa police have launched a hate crime investigation following an incident at the office of Federal Cabinet Minister Mckenna. A video posted online shows a man arriving at her office and shouting misogynist slurs and obscenities at one of Mckenna's staffers. It's not the first time Mckenna has faced harassment, and she's certainly not the only female politician who has suffered similar attacks or whose safety has been threatened. She says it might deter young women from joining politics and says how difficult this has been for those who choose a career in politics. For more on this, I'm joined by Shannon Phillips. She's an Alberta NDP MLA who joins us from Lethbridge in Alberta, Nova Scotia Liberal MP Lenore Zan, who joins us from Truro, Nova Scotia, and Alberta Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner, who joins us from Ottawa. Now, a heads up, we spoke earlier today just as the news that Joe Biden has picked Kamala Harris to be his running mate was breaking. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Michelle Rempel-Garner, I'd like to start with you. Yesterday, when Catherine McKenna responded to this incident at her constituency office, she said things like this are more common than people would think. How common is this in your experience?
I guess I feel like being on this panel is like Groundhog Day. I've been on panels like this, talking about incidents like this the entirety of my parliamentary career. And I guess I'm just tired of it. I'm tired of us having the same panel, talking about the same incidents when we should be trying to correct a culture that promotes misogyny. And it's not just in politics, and sitting here, it's not, I think about women who today are suffering similar sort of incidents and who are facing this in an even worse situation because they've got other intersectional elements like they're getting racialized slurs against them as well, too. And I think that what I would rather do is rather than give my platform to the people who harass me or who harass others, and I don't agree with having that video shown on networks because I think it promotes more of it, or talking about my own victimization is really just talking about how we move forward because I'm tired of being on these panels. I really am. It's unacceptable.
So what would you suggest we do to move forward so we don't have to do a panel like this in the future?
Well, first, I think that we have to separate out legitimate criticism of somebody's job from violence and aggression. So, certainly what happened in this incident was an incident of violence and aggression. People who disagree with my political position or my colleagues who are on this panel can choose a number of ways to assertively and positively voice criticism. We live in a democracy. Violence in any form is not acceptable. What I want, and this is going to be very tough, but we all have to criticize the stuff that happens in our own tribes. I do that when my party, there's clear incidences of colleagues or systems in my political party that needs to change. I publicly ask for change and I push for change. The same needs to happen in other political parties, and it can't be tribalized anymore. I don't want to get into partisan politics, but one colleague said that another colleague who was criticizing a particular policy was the reason for this. I think that we just have promoted a culture of microaggression that has been normalized by people in power getting away with this and not addressing it because they're either part of the ruling party or part of the power structure of any political party. And that's what needs to change is courage and calling it for what it is and realizing that, I'm sitting here as a white cisgendered woman from a position of privilege and I experience it. What about women who have other factors, trans women? And I'm tired of this. I'm tired of being on these panels and I want action.
Lenore Zan, I'm wondering if you wanted to come in here. Any thoughts on what Ms. Rempel-Garner had to say or any thoughts on how what Catherine McKenna talked about yesterday relates to your time in politics?
Well, I can definitely echo what Michelle has said, and also what Catherine McKenna has said, which is that we're tired of this. It's the 21st century. I've been in politics now 11 years, And I have been attacked a number of times, and it usually turns into some kind of a sexual attack. And as Michelle so rightly put, people of different genders and of different backgrounds are also targeted, particularly when you're a woman. And so it is a cultural thing, and I believe that it starts in the family. It starts young, and we need to train our kids to believe that we are all equal and we're all deserving of respect, and that it takes mutual respect to have a civilized society.
Shannon Phillips, do you think this issue is taken seriously enough? I know when I tweeted last night about what happened with Catherine Mckenna, I had a lot of people yelling at me saying she brings this on herself, this is her fault in some way. I mean, it's a fairly reprehensible position for people to take, but does that speak to a larger lack of taking this seriously in Canadian culture?
I think so. Well, I mean, the first thing I would like to echo, Michelle's righteous fatigue with this topic. I certainly I feel the same way. I would way rather be talking about my work. I would way rather be, having an argument with Michelle Rempel rather than having a panel discussion, because we are on different sides of the political conversation, and we as women in politics want to do our jobs. And I think I can speak for Michelle in that too, right? We would rather be talking about the substance of our work rather than this conversation over and over again. But there are some really specific things that probably can be done and should be done. Over the last few years, we have seen a bit of a shift in how women in politics are treated in social media and elsewhere, and some of the security threats. We've seen it around the world, and we've seen it in the Canadian context. And we've seen, I think, as a response, a lag and kind of a learned helplessness. So there is room for some public policy responses here. I think in the first instance, there does need to be a signal that the stuff that goes over the line is treated seriously. And Michelle's right that we need to appropriately distinguish between legitimate criticism within a liberal democracy and within the guardrails of civility and decency, and when it crosses the line into intimidation and using sort of extra democratic tools to get what you want, which is what violence and threats are. So there's certainly a space here, I think, to be having a conversation around appropriate security and law enforcement response around regulation of tech companies and so on. Most of that's going to come out of the United States, but Canada could play a role here too. And then, that would then move some of that cultural conversation forward, because it's one thing to say, yeah, this is cultural and we have issues to deal with, and that's true, but we also have a certain moment in time and specific ways that this kind of violence and intimidation has manifested itself politically for certain ends.
So help me out here. Go ahead, Ms. Grant. Go ahead.
I was just going to build on that. I'm going to add another element here, and it's that we do have laws to deal with criminal harassment. I've gone to court over a similar issue. I don't really want to talk about it, to Shannon's point about not wanting to, have that be what I'm talking about. But there is an element where I just don't think people get brought to justice. I think that, again, like, even for me, who, I have the privilege of being in a position of power, I think that even men in politics get away with this stuff. And we're either, as women, tasked to cover up and be quiet, like, don't be quiet, or we're not going to sign your nomination papers. And I'm just tired of this. Like, we do have a system. There's many tools in place to bring people to justice. And it's like this political tribalism prevents, like I'm not going to say what I want to say, but there are people of not my political stripe that have not been, their issues have not been addressed within their own party. And I will be the first one to take criticism here too, but it pretends beyond politics to say that there are a lot of women who experience this, they're just trying to make ends meet. They don't have time to go to the RCMP.
I believe women are facing this every day. And whenever I've spoken out, I've received enormous support from both the women and the men in the Liberal Party and ministers who thanked me for speaking out and said, yeah, like they're tired of it. They're tired of this because
but what if you spoke out against Tabara?
Put up with it by, you know, the public and men who jump on the bandwagon. And then there's also, you know, misogyny that women are also self-misogyny, and they jump on the bandwagon. And it's very sad because a lot of people don't seem to understand what misogyny actually is. And feminism or to be a feminist somehow got a bad name or a bad rep somewhere along the line. And we need to change that. It's time for change.
Shannon Phillips, I wonder if I could ask you this. You said you'd rather be here having a fight with Michelle Rempel-Garner because you're on different sides of the political spectrum, and we could probably arrange that at a future date. But help me with this, because as a reporter, I wanted to cover this because I felt the public doesn't quite know yet how common this is and how serious this is. And I appreciate the fatigue that Ms. Rempel-Garner talks about not wanting to be here to talk about sexist behavior and misogyny yet again. But yesterday, what happened, or what we saw yesterday at Catherine McKenna's office, going there in broad daylight, seemed different to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here.
So me all the time. I just don't go to the TV about it because I don't want to talk about it. I just don't.
But we need to talk about it, unfortunately. We wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't a problem.
Well,
it's a huge problem.
My Google search
just Shannon Phillips, just on that point, though, how can we talk about this without exhausting you and upsetting you, but also making sure the public realizes what happens to politicians and female politicians in particular?
Well, you know, I think, first of all, this isn't about my feelings. This is a real issue of public policy, so we need to grapple with it, right? And that's why I sort of said, okay, because it is an issue of public policy, there are specific steps that we can take within the institutions that we have in order to I think, better address some of these issues. I think, too, though, and so we absolutely do need to talk about it. And I've gone back and forth, and I'm sure I've had that same internal conversation with myself that Michelle and Lenore have had with themselves of, you know, are we actually going to talk about this today? Or are we going to talk about something else? And I have actually come down on the side of it is time. It is time to talk about it. We cannot run from it, right? Because if you do, you end up in a situation like, for example, what happened with Brexit. And, you know, we had an assassination of a Labour woman MP. Right. And so, like,
we can't sweep it under the rug anymore.
There are dangers here from not appropriately grappling with it and not appropriately situating it within this political moment. It is a feature of some of the way that political discourse works now, not a bug. And so, you know, really grappling with that and understanding what that's about. It's about taking some of the guardrails of liberal democracy off. It's about undermining the respect for the office and the respect for what we can do in public life. You know, that's what's underlying it, right? And so
people seem to be empowered, don't they, Shannon? Don't you feel that more people are feeling empowered to actually attack people like us? They're feeling empowered that it's okay to threaten violence and everything. They'll just get away with it.
What are we going to do about it? Like, what are we going to? I guess that's my thing. Like, Shannon, I support.
RCMP has to take it seriously when we report it. Red flag laws are very important, and hopefully we're going to be introducing those in the fall, and hopefully you two will support that. I think that would be a great step forward.
Michelle, you want to get in there?
Yeah, like I support what Shannon said, and I mean, I go back and forth on this too. But it's like, what are we going to do about it, right?
Red flag laws to start with.
And but you know what? I'm trying not to be
women have been murdered here in Nova Scotia.
I'll give you an example.
Who have reported to the police, and nothing was done.
Just Michelle, get your point out, and then we'll go back to Lenore and then Shannon.
I'll give you an example. So when I found out that someone in my party was allowed to run for us, even though they had, you know, allegations of sexual harassment, like serious ones, I publicly derided that. And what I see is that I feel that there is a partisan lens that's put in place, and certainly there is, and Lenore, I'm not saying this, but like there are people that are in positions of power that are not being subjected to these laws or to the same level of scrutiny. And that normalizes this more powerfully than anything else, because it says that some people get justice and some people don't. And until we fix that, until there's equity for any woman of any background, and people of any political power position or any political stripe are treated equitably in this, I just feel like we can put all the laws in place we want and there's still going to be inequity. So I just feel like what needs to happen is just courage to move beyond sort of partisan tribal boundaries on this and say, this is not acceptable no matter where it happens. Nobody asks for this. And to make sure that these people are held accountable, be it through, mechanisms in the House of Commons or within political parties or through criminal law. And we keep adding stuff, but we don't follow through with the action. And that's what I want.
All right, Lenore.
That's why I say red flag laws. So hopefully you'll support that when we bring it up in the House in the fall.
Okay,
that would be a good start.
Shannon Phillips, I wonder if you get your final thoughts. And we're learning as we're having this conversation, Kamala Harris is going to be the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic ticket. So
she'll be great.
An interesting development on a day when we're talking about a pretty horrific incident at a prominent female politician's campaign. Shannon Phillips, some final thoughts from you on this topic before we say goodbye.
Well, what I always want to leave women with is this. I am a provincial politician who has faced some of the worst of this, and I would still put my name on a ballot again, and I will continue to do this job. I don't want to speak for Catherine, but I know that she is also committed to her work, as are women that I know across the political spectrum. Look, it is still worth doing, and I think that is the first thing, because what is really regrettable about these conversations is when it gives women reasons to say, oh, I don't want that. And all of my time and my talents that fit in public life won't go into public life because of this. It is absolutely something that can be handled, can be managed. And that's why we need to talk about it, because we need to find better ways to do that. And I think the final point that I'd just like to make is, we do need to focus on the work, but women across this country are trying to do their jobs with these kinds of obstacles in their way of racism, sexism, what have you, various
misogyny.
kinds of barriers, and so the work is no less important, but the work of removing those barriers and working towards that diversity and inclusivity has to continue. It's no different in political life than it is in any other workplace. And, so you have two things can be true at the same time, that we're tired of talking about this, but that we have to talk about it. And I think that that's where we have to land on this topic and keep pushing for better.
Respect. Mutual respect.
Action.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there.
Red flag laws.
Well, if we get that action, I'm sure we can have you back to talk about it. I'd like to thank you all for spending some time with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.